Greetings, friends. It's Thursday, September 12th, and we've got Chapo coming back at you. I'm sorry we missed our annual 9/11 broadcast, but in honor of that, we've invited on the show our good friend David Roth. May I say happy anniversary to you and Mrs. Roth.
Yeah, I guess I should. That is real. We didn't get married on September 11th, but we did meet for the first time on September 11th, 2001.
Yeah, David and his wife organized a very controversial flash mob.
Yep.
In northern New Jersey. They hired a bunch of young men who were pretending they were in a moving company.
We were both on standby for a flight at the Portland Jetport. We're like, wow, what a day.
What a meet cute, David.
Yeah.
Well, always a joy to have David Roth back in the house. And of course, obviously, the Kamala Harris, Donald Trump debate. I watched all of it. Going to the boys for their immediate reactions. So much to talk about. What kind of gun Kamala owns. Donald Trump being a quote, I've always been a leader in fertilization. And then I probably the biggest takeaway of the night is the Springfield, Ohio pet shop massacre. Much to discuss, but I would just say political content or morality aside, I would just like to begin by talking about what I thought was probably the crucial moment in the debate that most pundits and analysts regard as a Kamala KO. And it was when in one of her responses to Trump, she made note of, or she claimed or made note of the fact that people are leaving his rallies because they're bored of him and his antics. The fact that he chose to respond to that was the beginning of a cascade of bait takings that plagued him all night long.
There was no bait that he didn't walk into.
Yeah.
The game plan for this debate for, a normal replacement level Republican, a Doug Burgum type, is very simple. When you're asked about the economy, talk about the inflation that everyone hates. When you're asked about foreign policy, just gesture in general to the world under the administration of the Blinken State Department. Do not say, I got involved with the Taliban.
Yep. And that's one of those mistakes that, I feel like anybody could have made. You're starting to answer a question. You remember that you're supposed to bring up inflation. And then suddenly at the last moment, you were like, I did finger Suzanne Summers.
Yeah.
And no one will admit it. No one will talk about it.
It's a common mistake. A lot of candidates, they go in there thinking they're going to talk about historic inflation, the world in chaos, all these classic presidential issues. And then something happens and they go, I actually only 70% of 12-year-olds have to give birth because of it. Yeah. I did that, by the way, but it's different than what everyone thinks.
That became the sort of the defining thing about the debate to me, because obviously there's nothing to learn about policy or either candidate really from it. It was just progressively more obvious Acme branded traps getting set up for Trump. Yeah. And then him just taking out a huge lolly and putting on a hat with a propeller on it and wandering into that trap, whistling to himself over and over and over again.
And Kamala is not the canniest or shrewdest politician in the world, but it was she laid a box with a copy of a 1993 issue of Vanity Fair with a stick over it, and he kept just wandering into it. And it was, safe to say, the worst performance of Donald Trump's political career.
Yep. Yeah. It also was amazing that it was the worst performance of his career in exactly the ways that you would expect. He's still he's lost most debates that he's been in. The time that he debated Joe Biden during the moment of Joe Biden's medical death, I guess you'd have to say that he won that one.
That was a technical knockout.
That was a technical knockout in the sense you cannot be defeated by a ghost. So he never won. But most of the other ones, in this case, it's it wasn't the sort of thing where no one's really landed some solid blows on him in terms of being you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. All of your policy ideas are disgusting. You want to get people hurt, whatever. They mention all of that, but he just kind of makes the Grinch face when you say that to him. And then it just passes on by. in this case, it was really the sort of thing where it's like, I bet that your hands are really small. And he's like, no, they're not. They're definitely not. Like anything, like any issue that he's ever been dinged by going back like 30 years, he's still mad about it. And all you need to do is mention it and he will talk about it for a minute and a half.
Yeah, it's the most jarring thing that I've taken away from it. And I have always kind of thought this, but it's really shocking to see it confirmed in such a blatant and direct way that, Donald Trump, he was portrayed both as like this electoral monster and this master of political theater, neither of which was true. People thought this, talk about a schedule of tomato cans.
Yeah.
Because he humiliated Marco Rubio and Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. Yeah. And, the extremely low bar you have to clear to get the better of Donald Trump, somehow no one was able to meet that bar.
Yeah.
For years and years and years. And then there was finally, a candidate of like, we'll say you could trust her to use the oven in your house without blowing it up. And everything just works. She got Trump to take ownership of Dobbs, which everyone fucking hates. She got him to make a bizarre and flowery speech about January 6th and then said, also, I had nothing to do with it. He, like, if it had gone on longer, he would have been like, bringing up things that everyone forgot about. My feud with Grimace was actually not that one-sided. He said horrible things about me.
Yeah, that was the part of it that I've not been the hugest fan of Kamala Harris as a senator, but I do remember seeing her questioning people in the Senate, and she's a prosecutor. She's good. Like, she's good at that anyway. Like, she's good at asking questions that elicit the answers that she wants. That's her job. And, like, it would be weirder if she was bad at it. Like, but in this case, like, she didn't even have to do any of that shit. Like, this was basically her being like, Poochie, you look like you have something else to say, do you? And then he just says it and dies on his way back to his home planet over and over and over again.
Actually, the Miss Teen USA dressing room, it said adult women dressing room, and I walked in it, and many of them were 18, 19 years old, but they're certified adults.
You wouldn't have known, Yeah, that was the part that I've always thought, and Dan O'Sullivan did a post about this. It was funny that, like, it would be very easy to get Trump to like say that he knew Beetlejuice personally. There's a lot of the things that, like, it's not hard to like, if you just like lay a couple of jelly beans in a row, he will follow it into a fucking jet engine. Like, he just doesn't have the ability to stop. And so at some point, if you're sort of like, like Wario endorsed me, he'll be like, Wario was my close friend, but we had a falling out over a woman. And like, just that's how he's going to be.
Every like liberal fantasy of like, I don't know, like Noam Chomsky or Bill Maher owning Bush from 2003. Yep. All those things were like patently ridiculous. Like, Bush was a cannier operator than people realize, certainly, even though I think that's a bit overblown. But all of the most absurd liberal webcomic fantasy of a Republican candidate, all of it is true with him. You can literally get him to do and say fucking anything. I have never seen anyone, not just unbidden. We talked a lot about like the traps that he walked into, but the things that he did, I think it's part of it is like he absorbed Joe Biden's essence by defeating him.
It's like Walter White, White with all of his adversaries.
Do you remember how when they asked Biden about abortion, which should have been his number one issue, they asked him about abortion, and he's like, "Who can forget Ricardo Sanchez raping her family? We're trying to look into what we're going to do about that." But Trump. Conversely, he mirrors that behavior. They ask him about fucking the economy, which should be his number one issue. And he goes, I've seen a lot of these kids who give birth, and they are actually having a pretty good time.
But yeah, there's that. I think that was also a dynamic that increased as the debate wore on, because it's always kind of the version of him. I mean, he's also very old. Like, if you have like an aged parent that you've spoken to at night, you know that it's kind of a coin flip. And like the worst case scenario, like if you're getting the like 1 out of 10 version, you get Joe Biden at the June debate. But this is like this version of Trump where he's hitting these like hairpin transitions between whatever it is that's floating through his mind at that moment is like, I mean, that's just like how a certain type of old blowhard is, you know, like this is like, it's like the most evil version of all of my like dad's old friends from the diner, where you would be like talking to them about a baseball game, and then one of them would like think about Kelly Ripa and like look you in the eye and be like, she's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen.
Yeah,
you think of Kelly Ripa.
The exact type of guy where it's like, you are so lucky that you retired like 40 years before Me Too existed.
Yep.
This is another thing. Like, I even noted this briefly after the Biden June debate, after, you know, probably the worst performance in a debate by any president ever. There could be some ones that are pre, you know, radio and TV where like someone's eye fell out.
Yeah, I was going to say,
know about, but
there's
like,
not a worse performance that doesn't involve like vomiting.
Yeah. But like, even during that, and like, it was hard to think about anything but the incredibly shambolic and horrific state that Biden was in. But one of my takeaways from that was like, holy shit, like Donald Trump is so diminished, he can barely take advantage of this.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if he hadn't been running against Biden, that would have been one of the headlines, that he is greatly diminished from what he was even in 2018 or 2019 or 2020. It just got overshadowed by how fucked up Biden was. But like, he is an incredibly old man who, you know, in his mind nearly fucking died recently. And, you know, these things don't improve. You don't get less old over time.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the aspect of I mean, I feel like that's the real, to the extent that the, you know, worm turned vibe wise when you replace Biden, it's really just, and, you know, I don't like talk about my own shit, but like my dad is the same age as Joe Biden. And the idea of like having to depend on, first of all, on that sort of person to do anything for another 4 years is frightening and also sad. You know, like you just don't, once a decline like that begins, it doesn't stop happening, you know, and it depends on what type of decline you're talking about. I would say you're definitely right that Trump appears to be on the downside of, I don't know, his like sanity years and is entering whatever is going to follow that. But I saw a lot of people saying that this was basically, as you said, Felix, like kind of the same performance he gave in the first debate, but it's the way that like, if you were playing basketball against a chair in an empty gym, like you're gonna do great, like you can win 11-0 or whatever. But this was just like, and it wasn't the sort of thing where you know, now you got to do it against whatever, like Rudy Gobert. It's like now you have to do it against just like, it's a bigger chair, like it's a couch, you know, and it's a stalemate at this point.
I mean, speaking to his you know, I don't know, declining mental capacities, I mean, I would say evidence of that is something that was like made clear before the debate, and I think in a lot of the like news articles I've seen after the debate, and I'm talking about the fact that he flew to the debate in Philadelphia and arrived with his personal consigliere Laura Loomer.
Unbelievable! What
who
a
was
fucking
the
glow
who was
up
the
for her.
person who apparently, according to the Guardian or other news reports I said today, is that like people in the Trump camp are blaming her for the pet shop debacle at the debate. And it's just sort of like, what I want to say is like, you know, political ideology aside, like if you are a supporter of Donald Trump or a fan of his, what do you have to say about a man who would allow someone like Laura Loomer into their inner circle and take her advice on anything?
It's amazing. It's also, honestly, like I'm kind of proud of her to a certain extent. Like this is because she's never been the most talented. You know, when you look at the rankings of like GOP Renfield mentality types, like it's not, the metrics are not there. Like she's unsettling in every way, and yet she just never stopped grinding. And obviously at some point, like everybody else decided that they needed to detach from him or whatever. And like, that was it. She was ready.
Yeah. I, in an oblique sense, do root for her sometimes because, on the GOP side, there are like star players, people who are going to be fine no matter what. Like, no matter if the administration they're part of ends in disgrace, no matter if they are mentioned in a federal indictment, they're always going to have a paycheck. They're always going to be able to pay off their house that is half ATV ramps. Yep. The Dan Bongino types.
Yeah, there's
Laura Loomer has never been that type. Laura Loomer, she got her start, and this is my favorite thing about her, perhaps. She got her start by starting a ISIS fan club at her college to prove that liberals would join an ISIS fan club. No one joined, and then she got expelled for starting an ISIS fan club. And that really just set the tone for her entire career. She has never succeeded in anything. All of her, we'll call them campaigns, end in people publicly mocking her. And I don't think she has ever achieved a single objective. She doesn't even, the only Laura Loomer fan I have ever seen in the wild, and this is the most telling thing, because every fucking loser has fans now.
Yep.
But Laura Loomer, the only fan of hers I ever saw was this, like, 79-year-old guy in Florida who was probably a member of the Irgun, was like, Laura, you're one badass Jewish lady, like the kind that helped me blow up the King David Hotel. And like all of those are her natural constituency are like people who had to move from Israel to Florida because of a rare blood disease. All of them died from COVID. She is alone in this world, but she somehow made it to the Olympic team. Yeah. You know, good for her.
Yeah, this is, you don't really know like what is going to, so anybody obviously could have done the start an ISIS fan club. No one joins ISIS fan club, kicked out of college, also somehow banned from Uber Eats for life or whatever. She's got a lot of like weird, like she's got some of, this is the one area where I would quibble with that she has no achievements. She's been banned from things that like don't ban people.
Yeah.
Like Slice, the app that brings you pizza. They're like, we will not do business with Ms. Loomer, and she knows why. We are not going to revisit this decision at any time soon.
If she tried to pick up like a free window AC unit from Craigslist, like a SWAT team would come to her house. Ma'am, they've told you you're not allowed to like take things for free on Craigslist. We've been over this.
Stay out of Facebook Marketplace, you deadbeat.
If she tried to play Farmville, Interpol would arrest her.
I mean, but,
somehow accidentally committing human trafficking in Farmville and being asked to leave. Yeah, she's one of my favorite, but the most enduring image of her is so when I was at Deadspin, our offices were on like 17th Street and in Manhattan, and then a few blocks west were the Twitter offices. And at one point she chained herself to the doors of Twitter to protest being banned, but like definitely did not do it in a way that was like, I think either what she intended or what she was trying to do, whatever it was. She chained herself to one of two doors that opened. And then the other door, there was like during her live stream, you would just see people coming and going as they pleased through the other door while she was chained to this one, being like, I am actually having the Holocaust happen to me right now.
David, Catherine covered the Laura Loomer handcuffing herself to the Twitter door, and she showed up in front of Twitter, and she was telling me about it while it was going on, and I was watching the live stream of people walking in and out of the door, and I said, Catherine, ask her why she hasn't handcuffed herself across both handles of the door so that it would actually block people from going in. And she asked her, and Laura's response, to her credit, was, it would be a violation of the fire code. So she's conscientious in that regard. So I will give her a credit for not violating the fire code and blocking any emergency exits to a large building.
It's also, I think, imagining her yelling it in that like Kids in the Hall chicken lady voice that she's just been yelling at them, like at the cameras at, like just sort of being like, good question. It's because of violating the fire code.
Yeah, there is like a haplessness to her that, like, we spent a lot of time covering Jacob Wohl, and like Jacob Wohl,
the goat.
Jacob Wohl is like, he wouldn't be the main character, but he would be an amazing side character in an Alexander Payne film.
Yep.
There's like some pathos there because he has like some crazy scam artist dad who probably like did like a Maranovich type situation with teaching him how to pretend to fall in front of an ice cream truck for the time he was a toddler. He was like, little David was probably like 3 years old, and the dad's like, we just fitted him for his first neck brace. He's a prodigy.
I love the idea of a Marv Marinovich of like a shitcoin scam. Just like, again, like we're just watching the kid tweet.
Yeah. You cannot wear anything. Nothing can touch your body except for a $23 three-piece suit that's advertised to you on Amazon. But there is, like I felt some, I would say, pity towards Jacob Wool, because it is like, what can you do when you're like psycho dad just like basically grooms you into doing that, in the traditional sense of grooming. But with Laura Loomer, it's just it's impossible for me to see her as anything but a fictional character, even though that I know she is real. Yeah. She does not scan as a real person to me. Sideshow Mel has more personhood to me.
There's cheese in this sandwich. Surely you know I'm lactose intolerant. Do you know how sick this is going to make me? Oh, come stand next to the bathroom door. I want to yell at you some more. Why, you little rapscallion!
Show business sucks. I'm out of here.
I think if you like dropped her off of a cliff, she would pause for 9 seconds and go, "Uh-oh."
Like it makes the Hanna-Barbera running sound whenever she walks. Yeah, she does have a kind of a cartoonish aspect there. I mean, the thing with this is that like it's impossible to hand it to her. Like she's incredibly vile, and yet like I completely agree that there's an element of her where just like she is in a field of like really some of the worst people that the culture has ever produced. She is the one that like has fought having to get a real job the hardest. And in some ways I think will be the one where like, I mean, I don't want to get ahead of like, because the Trumpists are going to try to steal the election. I don't know that they're not going to win it outright. Like it's a bad time. It's uneasy. The bit that I am looking forward to tentatively the most is all of these people having to get real jobs if he loses. Is like Sebastian Gorka having to like just get like your like a forklift operator license, like, or go do like one of the things that like would actually add some value to society instead of having a podcast where you sell emergency meals to people who are like basally in comas. Like Laura Loomer getting a real job is. I see you've been
eyeing my Wienermobile. No. The thing about Loomer that makes it hard to envision a world where she has to do that for me is that like everyone else in the Trump world, and especially like the neo-Trump world, they embody some type of archetype, right? Like with like Alana Habba or any of like the bad Trump lawyers, you can evince the type of character they are in a life divorced from politics. Like with Alana Habba, I see her and I go, evil real estate agent.
Yeah, absolutely.
She is the type of person where it's like she tries to hire a hitman to kill her husband so she can inherit a safe that has nothing in it. That's the type of person she is. I've met people like that. I've known people like that. Dan Bongino, same thing. They all are these characters from American life that we can all recognize.
Bongino to me is a gym owner who gets caught trying to commit arson.
Yes. But yes, he is the type of guy who like tries and fails to burn down his gym for insurance money. And his way of like setting it up is to send himself an email from a burner account that's like ISIS@hotmail.com.
Yep.
And it's like, we're gonna kill you for being Christian. And he'll be like, look at this.
They said my stair climbers were haram, and then this happens. That was earlier today.
Yeah. They like all identifiable. But Laura Loomer is like one of one. How she started out in life, you could picture her as like someone who marries a kind of hunchbacked orthodontist and is a very annoying PTA member, but she rebelled against that to the point of altering her face so she could never become that. She became a unique one of one, a type of person I don't believe I've ever encountered in my life.
Yeah, maybe if we spent I think if you were to go like on a fact-finding mission to Palm Beach County, Florida for like a year, you might come close, but I think it's like it really is first of all, it's a resource intensive thing to get like a new dramatic face applied to your head every 6 months for years is like most people, it's not in the budget. And I don't know what her means of support is. Like she doesn't have does she sell emergency meals too? Does she have some other,
That's a good point. I don't know. I don't think that's the other thing about Loomer. Like, I'm sure I'm probably wrong about this, but I don't feel like I've ever seen Laura Loomer flogging some sort of like Loomer coin or like Patriot fanny packs to keep the immigrants away from your wallet. Like, she's a real one. I don't know.
If you told me that like she has been living in her car this entire time, I would 100% buy that, because I can't forget, hawking a shitcoin and making like hundreds of thousands of dollars. I cannot picture her like getting it together to apply for an apartment. Like how would that go? Not well.
Yeah.
And any money she generates, if she generates any at all, I picture her making money the same way that the Three Stooges did, perhaps. Like, I feel like any revenue she's seen over the course of her adult life is a result of like running a metal detector up and down a beach.
Now, Mrs. Loomer, we've hired you to move my priceless art collection to my new abode. Now, I needed to say that you must handle all of these this Ming vase quite gingerly.
Laura Loomer is the only person where she would get hired for some ignominious job like the assistant to the nighttime janitor at a museum, and she would end up being chased by a mummy. She's the only person who could bring Three Stooges and Scooby-Doo type physical and theological logic to the world.
Stephen Miller could never. She's got that.
God, no. I just want to talk about Loomer's contribution to A Night at the Debate, as long as we're talking about, classic comedy archetypes. But I mean, like, obviously the thing that the thing that is most caught on in the days after the debate is another debate about whether Haitians are stealing pets to eat them. And now the thing about this is that Trump saying they're stealing people's cats, they're stealing the dogs, and they're eating the pets is just, there's no other way to describe it. It is incredibly funny, but there is a non-zero chance that this shit gets someone killed.
Yeah.
And I guess my initial reaction to this is, does this current Republican Party and conservative movement, do they like cats and dogs or not? Because I feel like just a couple weeks ago, it was the J.D. Vance childless cat ladies thing. It's so awful that women are raising pets instead of focusing on having families. Well, a group of hardworking entrepreneurial immigrants moves to Ohio and decides to actually do something about the pet problem in this country. And what is it? What is it? Make up your mind.
Yeah, this whole thing. I feel like Ralph Cifaretto talking to Tony. You eat fucking beef and pork by the fucking truckload. Like people that are eating the most factory farmed, Dachau cows and pork ever made. I mean, it is the video that's been going around by this like psycho YouTube guy who, a very interesting character. He tried to be like a Mr. Beast type, and it kind of worked out, but not as much as he would have liked. So his thing became like going to San Francisco and like everything that hits like a conservative media news cycle, like going to these places and being like, the media won't cover how fucked up this is. But all his reporting is just like asking a guy who lies, like, hey, did you see this? And the guy goes, yes. And he goes, well, there you go.
Yeah.
It's driven me crazy because the Springfield, Ohio shit, I watched his video. I watched it on my own and on Hassan's stream yesterday, and it's like all his evidence for this was like he would talk to one of those 50-year-old guys who wears like a a hoodie cloak, one of those hoodies that goes down to your ankles.
the N1 Merlin line.
Not available in any store. Only
It is only available to guys like this whose job seems to be walking from one end of the sidewalk to another over the course of 4 hours. People who have like pathing like Skyrim NPCs.
You can get sent a catalog, but only if you've like ever tried to plead Bengals related insanity for an automotive crime in court.
Yeah.
Well,
people like this, and like they're saying like the most outrageous, like anyone with any sense would immediately identify these as lies. Like a guy says, I saw a Haitian load 100 cats into a van. And
the 100 cats in a van thing is so ridiculous. I mean, do you know what a cat is?
Yeah.
I just love the idea of someone of driving a car with 100 cats in it. And you're like, oh, I see a cat. Pull over for a second. You grab the cat and then open the door to the van with 100 cats in it. What do you think will happen?
Herding cats is literally an expression for the hardest thing that you can do.
Have you ever tried to get one cat into a car? Like, I dated a girl who had like a cat who was like pretty like well behaved, like a very good cat. But we had to like load him into, like the carrier that you put them in sometimes when you're
oh
like,
boy, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
do I know?
I felt so evil. I'd like stood like putting him in that thing. I felt like I felt like I was like Tom Hanks in The Green Mile. I felt so awful. And that was one well-behaved cat. What do you, just 100 spare cats? You just go, hey, get in the car. And they're like, okay.
Yeah.
And apparently this guy heard his entire conversation with the police. And not only that, like the fucking idiot who's interviewing him is like, did this really happen? And the guy goes, I'm 50 years old. I wouldn't lie to you. And it's like, yep, no 50-year-old liars in this world.
Like feels like whether it's the hoodie cloak guy or like as best I can tell the genesis for the idea that like, oh, police are receiving reports that Haitians are eating people's pets, they're eating people's cats. I mean, like, it seems evidently clear to me that however this game of Springfield, Ohio telephone got started, it was almost certainly someone, speaking of The Sopranos, who had a Cosette situation with their own pet, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
He crawled under there for warmth.
R.I.P.
And then needed to like explain it to their girlfriend or partner, and it was just like a Haitian came in and ate it.
Yeah. It's like the Charles Stewart situation playing out at a microcosmic scale. Yeah, this is, I mean, I respect that you watched that video even once all the way through. There's two just hardcore slurs in the first like 15 seconds of it. And I was like, I don't think I need to like know any more about this than I just learned. Like it is as, I mean, not even just a question of being like unconvincing and stuff. Like this is the bit with this. And I think this is like, you can project this broadly across the entire Trump experience. Like very stupid, very obviously false. And yet, like, not really less dangerous to any of the people targeted by it for how stupid or how false it is.
Yeah. And here's what I'll say. I mean, like, I thought in terms of, like, a Kamala, I thought it was just abominable of her and Joe Biden for not just basically adopting 2020 Trump's border policy as their own, but at no point, like, to stand up for the concept of immigration and against this racist demagoguery. It's just like because like, oh, they're like, well, the polls show that people don't like immigration, more popularism, but just leaving, forget the blatant slanders about eating people's pets or whatever, but just like a squandered opportunity or just like the fact that they feel no inclination to stand up for the lives and rights of immigrants in America or just the concept of It just, I thought that was abominable.
Yeah, it was really that was a real, I mean, it's weird too, because it's like she won that debate as handily as anybody has ever won a debate. I mean, for the reasons that we talked about earlier. And yet after Trump says all that stuff, she hit this kind of like weird stilted laugh and was like, talk about extreme. And like, that's not, I mean, it is extreme or whatever, but like it's fucking Nazi shit. It's insane. Like disgusting, dehumanizing stuff. Like, I mean, not to say that you can't laugh at it, like, because it's stupid enough that it's like, what else are you going to do? But like, yeah, you're right. I mean, like, it's not the sort of thing where you're putting any political capital at risk to be like, you ought to be ashamed of yourself for saying stuff like that. Because you should be ashamed of yourself for saying stuff like that.
Well, they have sort of like forfeited their right to do that.
Yeah, they have.
Because, I'm so baffled by their posture on immigration, not because of the cynicism of it, that is to be expected, but just because of like the pure idiocy of it. Like you cannot literally run on like kids in cages and all of this. You cannot be, AOC, for example, going to the border and like doing this photo shoot where you are crying at these legitimately like horrifying images and accounts of like families being abused and separated and the terrible things that these border guards do. And then turn around and go, well, okay, the cause of all these things, we see the value in it because of like one poll that David Shore showed us.
Yep.
Even discounting even the cynicism of it, people will not believe you.
Yeah.
If they their last memory of you on this issue not that long ago was kids in cages. And adding to that, you can't go, well, 95% of what this guy says on immigration is right to the point that we are adopting his policy and we will sign it if it gets to the president's desk. You can't do that and then say, oh, but like the 5%, the stuff about like eating cats is horrible because you signed off on the rest of it.
Right.
But how much of a leap is it?
Yeah. It's, to me, that's like classic Democratic brained loser shit, I guess would be the term that comes to mind first. Like, where you, for one thing, it's just not at the most basic sense. Like, obviously it's disgusting. Like, I think that goes without saying. It's also, to me, ineffective. Like, it just doesn't strike me as being like, if you're running against somebody that is like, I'm going to deport your neighbors, I'm going to deport 20 million people. Like, you don't start negotiating over numbers there.
How about
like
15?
At the very least, yeah. I mean, it's like, who are you going to win over by being like 75% of a Nazi? Like, that's not like a winning strategy one way or the other. Like, you're not competing for that guy's voters.
Yeah,
sorry, I feel like when you mentioned AOC crying at the border, I'm thinking like, how can AOC deal with this new immigration policy? And I'm imagining a photo of her crying, like with her hand on a fence, and beyond the fence is a barbecue at Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s house.
Yeah, the whole like reason they say they're doing this, beyond just like, oh, we showed that Trump is a hypocrite, and we showed all these Republicans are hypocrites.
He vetoed the border bill that we said was evil 4 years ago.
Yep.
No one knew that. Oh my God, great fucking work. But the other reason they have given for this shift is that like it polls very well, like general immigration hawkishness. The same polls though, where like it was one poll where it said like something like 60% of people wanted mass deportations. The same poll, when actually bringing that policy into specifics, how you would actually do that, go about doing that with like, enormous amounts of people, millions of people were completely against it on similar numbers. It's kind of like abortion.
Yeah.
We saw not quite the same thing, but we did see, an inflated amount of support for like abortion restrictionism in some polls prior to Dobbs. But when you actually go into how that policy would look, when people actually see that policy enacted, they fucking hate it. Like, for any competent political party, they could either exploit that in some way or, like, I don't know, use your messaging apparatus, anything but just going along with it and saying, well, now Donald Trump is bad for not wanting to do this.
Felix, like, and then, like the in vogue theory among like Democrats now is this. I guess this idea that like, just people are just programmed directly by like memes that they see and the media, and that's why they believe that inflation is high when actually it's not. So I mean, if you actually believe that, wouldn't you use your massive media apparatus to, I don't know, like incept other ideas into people's heads? like perhaps like, we shouldn't be deporting 20 million people, or that or that immigration is not a threat to this country, that it's not an invasion of this country.
This is also another example of the Democrats presuming that the media that is not explicitly like reactionary, like your Fox and to the right of that, like assuming that the Times is just going to do what you say because they're not that is, I mean, not only is it not correct, at this point, it's like very obviously incorrect and dangerous to assume that like they're just self-evidently going to do the right thing on this. You can't, like, you have to message it, as you were saying, Will, that like you basically, like, you can't assume that a factual report about this, first of all, will be factual, because like big elite institutions, like you can't necessarily assume that like the Times or MSNBC is going to be anything other than like, scratch a liberal, find a fascist type perspective on it. But then also, I think that this idea of trying to find the sort of the right words for this, accepting the premise of all of this is bad. Accepting that it is self-evidently ridiculous to people, and therefore you don't need to say. Trump said during the debate that like David Muir or whoever was like, you're going to have the military going around deporting people, and he said yes, and local police. Like, make him like follow that up, because like basically what you're asking people to accept there, it's not the sort of thing where like when he says it, everybody hears how gross it is. Fucking underline it. Like, do you want militias in the streets pulling your neighbors out of their houses? Like, don't trust the fucking New York Times opinion page to say that for you, because they won't. At the very least, half of them are going to be like, well, it would be difficult to pay for, but with like the right calculation on the tariffs, it could be made to work. Like, you need, if you really hate that stuff, you need to make it clear that you hate it. You also need to enact policies that show that you don't support it, which, as we've seen, is not necessarily a strong suit here either. But I feel like even the rhetorical bit would have done something. And I was surprised. Well, not really surprised. I was disappointed and a little grossed out that they didn't even try it.
Yeah, David, to that point about just the general democratic posture towards the media as of late, that has frustrated me immeasurably, because we saw it in the aftermath of the Kamala CNN hit, and just generally, it's been a sign that like none of the fucking losers that surrounded Biden and were lying their asses off for years and years and years about how mentally competent he was, it's a sign that they're still here because they had the same ridiculous attitude that like the media is out to get them. And it's like, is CNN or any of these places cynical operations that care first and foremost about profit? Yeah, absolutely. But it falls flat to me, because if you have been saying this for like 8 fucking years now, as the Democrats have, that the media is out to get them, well, at some point you have to do something besides complain about it.
Right.
You have this entire fucking party. You have millions upon millions of dollars in donor funds. You have all this institutional strength. Do you have any plan for it besides fucking complaining? It reminds me of the people who act like, when we lost the primary, when Bernie lost the primary, that it's not a real loss because the party did some unprecedented fucking thing to go around and fuck us all. Well, sure, they did, but isn't it an indictment on the Sanders campaign that they weren't prepared for that?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the bit that like it's always been the most crazy making aspect of how Democrats have responded to Trump, because I don't think that there's really anything that you could say about him that is too dramatic for me. Like, I do think that like as cheesy as it is to keep hearing it over and over again, like he is a threat to the idea of the future of like democracy as it functions now. Obviously, it's not functioning very well. It's not the sort of thing where he didn't come out of nowhere. Like, the failures of the system as it exists created the possibility for him to rise as far and as fast as he did. More than that, though, if you mean that, like if it is the sort of thing where it's the important election that has, got consequences for 100 years in the future, the most significant decision that we've ever, had to make as a people. If that is the case, how are you so passive about it? Like, how could you possibly, like, it just, that idea of like, it's really important for you to do this thing. I, on the other hand, am going to like keep playing small ball and like try to win by, 1.5 or whatever. So that like, I mean, I don't know how to run a winning presidential campaign, but I do feel like that sense of urgency, if it is not embodied, if it is just constantly being underlined, but not performed in any meaningful and like visible way, then it's going to feel fake and people are going to feel taken advantage of.
Yeah, 100%.
To speak about another moment that I think touches on this in terms of like how cavalier they're being with supposedly the most important election of our lifetimes was probably Kamala's worst moment in the debate, which is like, coming from me saying this is not exactly surprising, but her answer on Israel Palestine was appalling. It was appalling because she just like had an opportunity to make, as I don't expect much from her, even another one of these like meaningless symbolic, slight like tacking slightly away from Joe Biden, one of Joe Biden's most unpopular policies overall, but crucially, terminally unpopular among young people. If you're hoping on counting on their votes,
even if it's cynical, it's unpopular in states you need to win. It's unpopular in demos you need to win.
And the fact that he won't even do us the courtesy of lying to us was, astonishing to me. But that being said, it speaks to like the overall, like, to show how badly Trump fucked this up. Is that I was like, okay, like, what's Trump's reply to that? And the thing is, it's interesting in both the last debate and this debate. I think it's clear that he and his people know that the less you talk about this, the better, because I think they know how unpopular it is. But what did he do immediately? The first thing he said in response to her answer was, first of all, she hates Israel. She hates Israel. She's lying about this. She hates Israel and she wants to destroy it. And I'm like, fucking great. Well, you just let her off the hook there, doing her work for her. Just like. Actually, I agree with everything Mrs. Harris just said.
I had very low expectations in the sense that I expected to be utterly nauseated by the one question I expected them to ask about Israel, which I knew would not center on, say, the rape concentration camps that are operated by the Israeli security state. Or the
young American woman they just executed in the West Bank.
The one of many Americans they have executed over the years, or for that matter, the 2,000-pound bombs that we sold them that they dropped on another refugee camp.
Also earlier that day, I believe, too.
Yeah,
also a Tuesday thing. But
leaving a crater the size of a low-rise in the earth. I had low expectations, but somehow Kamala exceeded my low expectations by repeating what Joe Biden did, repeating the fucking absolutely repulsive rape hoax, which is especially disgusting now knowing what we do about Israeli prisons. The thing that really frustrated me after this, because bottom line, even if it was the rhetoric was particularly enervating, it is exactly what I expected her to say. In essence, it was from people who, the left liberal side of media, like Mehdi Hassan. He posted a clip of Josh Shapiro in a press scrum after this, where Shapiro goes, I thought her answer was great. She said that Israel has a right to defend itself, but that Palestinians need to have rights and safety while also disavowing violence against Israel. And the sentiment among a lot of these people who are cognizant of how awful all of this is, but nonetheless are so enthusiastic about voting for Harris that they are looking for any chance that they can get to point out her supposed divergence from Biden. Hassan posted that clip and said, "I'm so glad he's not the VP pick and it's Waltz." Why are you fucking glad? He just said exactly what Harris said, which is exactly what fucking Biden said. What is the fucking difference?
Yeah.
What is the fucking difference here?
I feel like this runs all through the experience. I didn't watch the previous debate. I think I hadn't really watched the debates between Biden and Trump either. Like I had sort of, and I don't know, if it's gotten worse or my tolerance for it has kind of atrophied somewhat. But that is a good example of this, like sort of like that analysis as being like extremely savvy and extremely dumb at the same time. And I think that that's like most of what you saw in the debate. Like it's incredible to me that, especially, someone who remembers watching these from like, whatever, 2000 or something like that, the debates are shaped the same. That it is still the sort of thing where like a question about climate change is part of the like speed run bit at the end where it's like
30 seconds.
Say something nice about your opponent. Just one thing though, be fast. And then also, what are you going to do about climate change if you have the time for that? I'm like, still fucking doing it 20 odd years later. And in this case, this is like that, the way that those questions are asked. I mean, like, especially too, that there's been this kind of like weird canard about like, we want to see more policies from the Harris campaign. It's like, probably you don't, because you never write about policy and you don't talk about it. Also, like, you're probably not going to like the policies anyway, but they're not important. That's not what this election is about. It's not what politics right now is about, sadly, or not sadly. It's just, that's how it is. The thing with this though, is that like, if you're having people talk about a political, like a binary political choice for 90 minutes on TV, and you can't talk about policy because you don't know anything about it or you don't care about it, the types of questions that you wind up asking are perverse, which is what we got here. That like a question about what is happening to people in Gaza is not a hard thing to ask. And I think that it's clear too, you don't even have to look at polls. Like, people care about this in a way and for reasons that are very, very obvious, very human sort of reasons. And to somehow ask, first of all, just one question about it, but then to ask one question about it that is basically like, will you say the words that we want you to say in the proper order, in an intonation that we find convincing? And that's the sum of it, is infuriating. It's infuriating even if you don't care about this issue and if you don't care about what's happening to those people, because it's just like, it's a game of like reflecting television back at television and then television telling you how you did. But if you do care about it, it's insulting in the extreme. I mean, it is just the sort of thing where it's like, none of the stuff that matters about this has even registered to you. This thing's been going on for a fucking year now.
Yeah, I have said that in a lot of ways, the general consensus among the American people that it has been a monumental shift in how people talk about, how people think about Palestine and Israel since like even the Obama administration. And I always like try to remind younger people of this, how insane any of this was in like 2001 and 2002, how horrible the climate was both on like Israel and just American foreign policy in general.
Yeah. How
just the unbridled fascism in the body politic. But for all the improvements among like, the average American and the viability of like a pro-Palestine movement in America, for all the incredibly positive changes we have seen, especially in the last year in America there, the political media is still going to be in 2002 forever.
Yeah.
That is probably never going to change. How important that is, I mean, history will determine. People are watching less and less TV, but as it figures for the presidential election now, there is just no change in framing, despite a significant sea change in public opinion.
Just a few more from the actual debate. I mean, like, it turned out a few good lines. I mentioned them at the beginning. I have been a leader on fertilization. This was in the context of probably the worst response he could have given to his weakest issue, which is abortion and Dobbs. As you said earlier, Felix, he owned the Dobbs entirely. He wrapped his arms around it. It was the bear hug strategy. But then, like, it was the bear hug strategy with Dobbs. But then also, like, he threw J.D. Vance under the bus when, like, the moderator was like, when they asked the question about, like, would you sign a federal abortion ban? And then, like, he was like, well, we won't have to. There's no need for it.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't.
And then she was like, well, your vice president said you would. And he's like, I don't really talk to J.D. about these things.
He says a lot of things.
He was like, I don't know. I've never talked to you about this issue.
Yeah, I think you're thinking of a different guy. Not the guy from before with the beard and the tie, right? That was Well, that was also great because he just can't stop. This was a real thing that jumped out at me again as I sort of was out of shape on Trump stuff. Loves to say millions, really loves to say billions, but he simply cannot resist like saying that he did some big thing with a number attached to it. And so the idea of this is sort of like this policy that everyone hates, that is going to lose you this election as likely as anything else. He has to be like 52 years. They couldn't solve it. 52 years is a pretty long time. And like, just can't, if like a number is in there, he's going to just polish that number till it shines like the fucking Super Bowl trophy and then be like, I did that. That's
This was a recurring problem that I noticed with Trump, where he was in this rhetorical or psychological trap where on one side there is his impulse to like take credit for like anything big, anything monumental that will be in the history books. But on the other side, he remembers that he's running for president and no longer in the Republican primary, and he has to appeal to people who don't spend 19 hours a day on like QAnon groups. So he'll do things like this where he's like, hey, they couldn't solve it for 54 years. I changed it completely. Everything's different now. But also it's like the same as it was before.
Yep. Yeah.
And, or with like Harris's policies, he had the same problem where it's like, her dad's a Marxist. She's a fucking communist. All her strategies are horrible. She's going to ruin this country. All her ideas are so crazy. Oh, and also she's a dude from a do-nothing administration, and they won't even be able to pass any of these scary plans. And it's like, what, like, do you remember the thing that you said 30 seconds ago?
I mean, the answer is quite obviously no, but I love that. No. My favorite one of those was when he was talking about like, clean energy stuff, which is also one of those things that like a legitimate domestic policy win for the Biden administration, like incredible growth in solar. It's like something that you would brag about if you were like running for president and not Kamala Harris. Like instead she's just sort of like, fracking's great. I actually drink the fracking water and it gives my skin a shiny taut mess. But
she looked great, by the way.
She did look great. When Trump was talking about all of this stuff where he's like, solar, it doesn't work. The sun goes down. They never accounted for that. And so
David,
the sun goes down.
I have the solar quote here. He says,
all right, good. Yes.
He says, solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar.
Super. Love that shit.
And it's like they need a whole desert. It's like, fuck, if only we had deserts in America.
Yeah,
maybe we could wring some energy out of them.
Well, they're currently in use. They're filling the function of being an uninhabitable space.
He said you need 400, 500 acres, which like already hilarious to say like we can't use the desert because like Wile E. Coyote needs to.
Right, I was gonna say
it's just like. It's important for Joe Pesci from Casino to bury bodies. We can't do anything else with it. But
mobsters, they can't even have meetings anymore. Yep. There's a solar plant there.
They say that they like animals, but they're gonna take Snoopy's cousin who lives out there. They're gonna make him move.
yeah, to like do all that, but then to be like, also I like it.
Yep.
That is the perfect summation.
The Trump difference.
The perfect summation of his strategy last night. Culminating in the single worst performance of his entire fucking career.
Another moment I got to shout out. This is actually one of my favorite Trump moments from the debate. And David, it speaks to your thing about like these certain tics he has, and to his affinity for Laura Loomer, which is that like he loves talking about people who like him.
Yeah,
and anyone who gives Trump a positive review. I mean, it's a game recognized game. He's going to big them up too. And this is in response to Kamala Harris's, rather ridiculous thing where she was just like, I've talked to generals and world leaders the world over, and they say you're a disgrace. Yeah. And I'm like, name them. Who are these people? And the fact that they're like, they probably want to keep him in a reps is like, well, you don't think he's that much of a disgrace because you won't put your fucking name to it. So it's like in response to this idea that all world leaders think he's a joke, he immediately, you could see immediately, he goes to Viktor Orban. Viktor Orban. He's one of the strongest, toughest leaders in the world. He's one of the greatest leaders in the world right now. And, he agrees with me on everything. And it's just like, regardless of what you think of Viktor Orban, Hungary has a population equivalent to New Jersey.
Right. Like, it's a backwater. It is like the right-to-work country in the EU.
Country.
Yeah. It's like, Viktor Orban, the president of the Tennessee of Europe, said,
Victor, the leader of evil Epcot, Victor Orban. It is one of the most confusing things I have ever seen a modern political candidate ever do.
Yeah.
It defies reason. Hungary, more people live on the south side of Chicago. It is a backwater that gets EU runoff money. That is the only reason they have electricity. And the reason they get this EU runoff money that keeps the lights on is because if shit really hits the fan, they will be one of those countries that is like a breakwater against Russia if things really go down. And he's like, you might as well like stop the debate and go, hold on, I got endorsed by the mayor of Natchez, Tennessee.
Yep. It's like a huge one for me. I do like the idea of Rod Dreher watching this debate and being like, I wasn't sure about it. But then there was one moment that I really liked.
I mean, there are a couple, two more quick Trump hits. I did really like when he said Biden hates you. First of all, I know Biden hates her. And once again, it's like, do you realize that how good that is for Kamala to hear to have her opponent at a nationally televised debate say, yeah, that guy everyone also hates, he hates her.
Right. Do you remember the mummy that I yelled at last time? Well, he thinks that your hair looks bad.
He did the Steven Seagal, your family hates you, sucker. Yeah, just like he probably had like hours. They were drilling for hours. They were like tired of Biden. Everyone hates Biden. Tired of Biden. He's like, Biden won't even talk to her.
Yep. And I talked to him, and I'm a fan of Biden. I like it.
Yeah, I'm voting for him.
I'm personally going to vote for him.
And then I guess like finally, this one is, I have no idea what the context for this was, but it was his comment that they're doing gender reassignment surgery to illegal immigrants in prison. I don't know.
Oh my God.
I don't know what the context of that, what he was responding to, but it was like, I thought your whole thing was that we should incarcerate illegal immigrants, and wouldn't on top of that giving them gender reassignment surgery kind of be like cool to you? I mean, I don't know. Like, what is this bad or good? I don't really know.
I would bet money that you can find an interview he did in like 2012 where he's like, I think we should give them bottom surgery so they won't come back. like some conservative, like on Lou Dobbs, he said that. But this one was baffling. I have no idea where he got this one. I usually have like a pretty good finger on the pulse for things that are conservative media. I wouldn't say I like watching conservative media, but I don't value my own time. But this was unrecognizable to me. I was talking about it with someone last night, while I was watching it on Twitter, and someone replied to me and said, that's actually happening, and then blocked me. So that really sums up that line of messaging.
Yeah. Also, like that's a very new Twitter interaction.
Okay,
just like,
wait. I think I get it. If he's implying that the illegal immigrants that commit crimes and that get sent to American prisons get there and then request gender they request gender reassignment surgery and we're giving it to them, that's bad. But if we were just doing it to them to like punish members of MS-13 by giving them a set of tits, then that's good.
I know. I really. This was why you have to get the Criterion of American Me. They deleted this scene. we need you.
Little puppet is now little puppet.
Yeah, little puppet. We need you to go in and take hormones so you can make a really good electronic album. We need you, little puppet. We need someone in the gang who knows a lot about Bloodborne lore.
This was a good, like, it was a real kind of throwbacky Trump moment. Like, this was back when he was watching less TV and talking to more assholes across this country. There was more stuff like this happening because it would be like he would have a private audience with like the universally understood to be the single shittiest rancher in California's Imperial Valley. And that guy would tell him something stupid. And then 15 minutes later, Trump would say it on TV. But now it's like this is just all like him kind of half remembering. I think this is also an instance of podcasts being too long these days. If he's trying to listen to Tucker and it's like a 3.5 hour conversation.
Oh boy, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's not going to be able to
yeah.
process all of that.
Oh my God, David, think how mad he gets trying to watch Tucker on his fucking phone.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Well, in the interest of podcasts being too long, I just got one more thing before we get you out of here, David. And well, this leaves the debates here entirely, but it is probably the biggest story in sports media at the moment, and I need Defector's official reaction to this. What is Defector's rating on that work Unc was putting in on Instagram Live?
We have been Big Unc. Obviously, it's a mistake that anyone could have made. We've been trying to think about like how or if to cover it because. So, are you aware of like the deep lore of like why the conspiracy theory version of why Shannon Sharpe left his phone on his nightstand while having sex and live streamed it?
It's like to hit the top of trends.
Yeah, I wish that it was the sort of thing where he was like, he was trying to do some like really popular like video work. It was supposed to be a story.
No, he was trying to win a bet with Ocho Cinco.
Yep. So the story, the version of it that is like the darkest thing is that Cat Williams gave famously insane, brilliant, but mostly insane comedy guy, Cat Williams, gave some long interview where he implied that Shannon Sharpe was gay.
Right.
And so the idea is that this was like by broadcasting the audio of himself having sex with a woman who he identifies by name.
I'm taking Chapo Trap House in a strange new direction. Look out for Monday's show, everybody.
Yeah, I like, David, I am also like a fan of Cat Williams, but it's also like at a certain point, it's like, okay, then like who are the straight celebrities? Because apparently they're all gay.
Yes, I was going to say, this is one of those, like, Cat Williams says a lot of things. Like, at some point, you don't need to be out there being like, and I have actually, to Mr. Williams's fifth point, like, it's a normal penis.
Yeah.
Like, don't bother, dude. It's okay. Like,
yeah, I mean, like, I of course love entertaining like the media business angle of any incident. I think people have an endless capacity, people in media, to operate cynically and calculating. But let us be clear, leaving your phone on while you're having sex is that not an incredibly Unc thing to do?
Yeah.
Like, that is probably the Unc.
Like, the only
activity.
Unkier thing is if he was like, so I had my Bluetooth in while we were doing it, and it was accidentally brushed in a moment of passion, which then triggered all that. Yeah, like it's a butt dial from your uncle during an intimate moment is.
Oh my God! You know what's terrible about this? Josh Shapiro is going to take notes and be like, "Oh, I need to do that."
The sound of someone with like a 99% accurate Obama voice being like, "You like that? If you don't like it,
Yo, I'm giving it to you, girl. After this, I got to go get right with my preacher man.
If you like my stroke, I'll keep doing it.
He's
fired up, ready to go. Call and response.
Wasn't it so weird seeing Shapiro at the Scrum last night? How he's totally dropped that.
Yeah,
it was like up until he bowed out. He was like, every Sunday I put on my best and go down to the Baptist church. Like, what, man?
Yep.
But he's gonna do this. He's gonna go to his wife and be like, listen, you may not like this, but like,
in fact, I'm sure you're gonna hate
president. Do you want to live in the White House?
But of course
we have to put this Kangol hat on the bedpost. I'm going to accidentally turn my phone on.
Josh Shapiro should start dressing like Quentin Tarantino.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wearing a Woo-wear hockey jersey and a backwards Kangol.
Josh Shapiro's making a speech and he's like, he's up there and he's like, and we're going to get rid of technology.
appearing on Meet the Press, but he's got the thin braided beard that Samuel L. Jackson had on Jackie Brown. Otherwise, just a regular suit.
But David, I mean, I guess my last comment on the Shannon Sharp audio orchestra is I woke up this morning, I had to throw on First Take, and I'm like, I need Stephen A. to weigh in on this, and they didn't say anything, or at least I turned it off. I didn't get any comment from Stephen A. Pat McAfee did mention it on the show today, and he was like, "Great work, brother! You did, we all do it." He was just like, "Great job by Unc there, right? Woo! Sports.
That is
sex."
McAfee's incredible.
But I need Stephen A. to weigh in and be like, this brother right here. First of all, I'm disgusted. Frankly, it was atrocious.
He needs to do. Well, the thing with Stephen A. is that it's like there's 20 hours of Stephen A. programming in some form or another every day. I think the place where he should address, because he's got his podcast and he's on TV all the time. Every now and then he will do one during a Knicks losing streak, where it's like a totally dark room, and then he like looms into a thin pool of light, like Pazuzu in The Exorcist, where the face comes out of the darkness. And then he just like talks about like Dante DiVincenzo letting him and the whole city down or whatever. Like that's like he needs to, if he's going to record a response, it needs to happen in like black box theater style at like 2:15 a.m. tonight.
Yeah,
we can't give up hope. It could happen.
Or I mean, or he could, he could praise his performance. At least of what I heard, it seems like the lady in question was enjoying herself.
Yep. He did a great job.
Yeah,
he did a great job.
I think that's probably like the version, one of the areas where there's some like wide agreement with Pat McAfee here. Like certainly, if somebody that you worked with accidentally or on purpose broadcast 20 live minutes of them having sex.
Like better than 2 minutes, 2 live.
Yeah, but like being a good teammate there is just basically being like, you're fucking killing it, dude. I love that. That was so cool when you did that.
Pat McAfee, I'm not like a stick and ball sports guy. But I've seen this Pat McAfee character, and I really think he is like a shoo-in to be the Immortan Joe of America in like a post-apocalypse scenario. I could really see myself in 20 years being executed by Pat McAfee.
It's just the color of a Japanese eggplant, like just a livid purple. You were right about getting addicted to water, Pat. I understand you're going to pull me apart in a minute, but you saw further than me.
It would be an honor, sir. It would be an honor to be executed by Pat McAfee and then having my body chained to the front of his Bronco.
Yep. What a glorious day, right? Yes. Come on, it's terrific.
I am awaited in Valhalla!
What a glorious day indeed, and what a glorious guest and episode for this Thursday's show. I think let's wrap it up there for today. But that does it all for us today. And check out David Roth on Defector. He'll be breaking down second by second the Shannon Sharp audio.
Back and to the left. Look for it tomorrow.
Yeah. You get out like the like where you write on the TV screen like in football. Where you're like, well, now you're gonna see what Unc's doing here. Is that
freeze it? Okay.
Yeah.
What's he doing here? Yep.
It seems like he's calling an audible here. They're doing that some RPO.
There is a great moment, a very bad pick in the NFL in Week 1. After the quarterback threw it, but before it was intercepted, the color commentator, it was like one of the national games of the national team, went, "Oh no!" And I look forward to like breaking down the video and getting one Adam Archuleta "Oh no!" in there. And I'm grinding the tape of Unc putting it down.
Yeah. No, yeah, I love when they say like we're gonna have to look at the tape. We put out some good tape over this weekend. So once again,
I want to see the all 11.
Yeah,
Shannon Sharp smashing his lady friend.
But by all accounts, I think it was a solid performance from Mr. Sharp.
Yep. I wish him good luck.
It's only week 2. Let's see how he fucks in January. All right,
there's a lot of balling left and right. They all look good now, but staying healthy is a big part of it.
Week 1 is a liar. I'm going to see consistency here. All right, that does it for all us today. Till next